History 2323 lecture overview, the New Deal. Okay, the New Deal is going to begin with FDR's presidency. Like I said earlier, he'll defeat Hoover quite easily in the 1932 election. FDR's got name recognition because Teddy had been president early, even though the two families pronounced their name slightly differently. His personality was very outgoing. He was very wealthy. He's the first president, I believe, that never had to work a day in his life. But he had a commitment to public service, so he spent it in other ways. And then his spouse was the fourth plus. Eleanor is going to be the first active first lady and will set a new standard for them because most of the time first ladies were in the background and unseen. In a radio address or a speech, he makes the comment about a new deal for the American people, and so you need to compare this now. Rather than the rugged individualism, he's going to focus on the forgotten man. Rather, with no direct relief of Hoover, he believes in direct relief. And rather than passive, he believes in active progressive government. So the election occurs in November. He doesn't take the oath of office until March of the next year. So there's 5 months of limbo here. And finally, he takes the oath, and the first thing he does is deal with the bank crisis. And he gets on the radio. These will be called fireside chats eventually. And he tells the American people, put your money back in the bank. We're going to close all the banks for 5 days and then put your money back in the bank. And this is going to return confidence and stability to the banking system, which was crucial. So the first New Deal, you'll see here in a second, will stress planning. The first 100 days, much of the legislation is passed. Intellectuals from various universities will be advisors to FDR. They're called the Brain Trust. And then the focus is going to be the 3 R's: relief, recover, reform. So the bank holiday is the 5-day closure, and then he reopens, and the money that was in someone's mattress goes back into the bank, and the banks can then, because banks have to have money to make money, so then they can loan out the money again, and they can serve their normal purpose rather than, because part of this, if the bank closed and your money was in it, your money was lost. So looking at the first New Deal, I put 4 target areas in just to give you samples. So FDR's first goal was rural poverty, and there's 2 programs there. The first is the Agriculture Adjustment Act, the AAA, under Henry Wallace. A part of that was ruled unconstitutional in that U.S. Butler case, so you'll see there'll be a second AAA later. And then the big one that you should know more about, the Tennessee Valley Authority, which was actually an idea by a Nebraska senator back in the late teens, 19-teens, to help bring electricity to a very poor part of the country in Appalachia. And so FDR will do this with this massive building project of dams and all these rivers and creating lakes and parks and everything. And it becomes a massive utility, government-owned utility company, which is still in operation to the present day. I think it's the largest utility in the country still. A second target area was industry, so this will be factory and jobs. 2 parts to the National Industrial Recovery Act. The first is the National Recovery Act under Hugh Johnson. Their slogan was, "We do our part." And here's where you have the first recognition of labor unions in Section 7A, federal government recognition. And then the second part of the NIRA is the Public Works Administration under Harold Ickes, although parts of that will be ruled unconstitutional later as well. Financing and communications, the third target, and the FDIC protects your bank account. The SEC looks over your stock market to make sure we don't have a crash again, and the FCC, which is actually a populist idea, is going to be government regulation of the airways. In this case, it's going to be of the radio, telephone, things of that sort. And then the fourth target is unemployed jobs, and so FERA under Harry Hoppins will be a jobs program, same with the CWA, and the CCC will be young men 18 to 25, which will work in the outdoors. They build national parks, they'll put out fires, they'll do all kinds of things. And the evaluation of this program is, and it's going to be the same case later, mixed. You have some success, some not so great, and then others is kind of in the middle with neither good nor bad. So, but some of these things are still around, so those are going to be the good things, like the TVA and the FDIC and the SEC, FCC, all those things are still around. In the 36th election, FDR will face challengers, some who began to think he was going too far to the left politically. And so 3 of them, Townsend, Coughlin, and Long. Now Long will actually, he has our Share Our Wealth program, which you can read about in your text. It's quite, basically everyone over $1 million, you lose all of that money of over $1 million, and then it's going to provide, you know, an annual income and free education, college, etc. So, but Long is assassinated in 35, so the year before, and that probably would have been the biggest threat, but he was gone before the election occurred. Coughlin and Townsend will create another party, Social Justice Party, to challenge FDR, and that will be the William Lemke, will be the social justice candidate in 36. So FDR will be the Dem, Landon will be the Republican, and FDR will win easily in this election. However, in the aftermath of winning re-election, he will, because some of his earlier first New Deal programs were ruled unconstitutional, he wants to change the Supreme Court, and so he suggests that every judge 70 years old or older can be replaced, up to 15 total judges on the Supreme Court. Well, this went nowhere. Even his own party, when it was against it, and so it went down in flames. However, it did get the attention of the Supreme Court members that were there, and they started voting more favorably towards future New Deal programs. Here's a second New Deal. It's going to emphasize spending. Keynesian economics, which is the new school. The new tool is spending to try to stimulate the economy. There's your second AAA for farmers. You also have a bunch of out-of-work writers, artists, actors, etc., photographers, which will be busy recording the New Deal or putting on performances for the New Deal. You'll have a works program for the youth. That's the National Youth Administration. Fair Labor Standard Act is what that FLSA. I think these are all going to be in your texts. The Wagner-Connery Act, which sets up this National Labor Relations Board, which settles labor disputes. A new labor union is born, the CIO, and they will join, the AFL-CIO will join forces, and they're the biggest labor union today. In the 1950s, they'll join forces, but at this point, they're separate. John Lewis will be the head of it. And then a new tactic invented by the United Auto Workers, which is before, when you went on strike, you picketed outside, and then people would replace you and you'd lose your job. So what you do here is you sit down at your workstation and you don't leave it. FDR passes Social Security. In part, this was the idea to counter Townsend's old age pension plan. There's a wealth tax. There's Keynesian economics again, and the evaluation again is just going to be mixed. So assessing the deal, you've got some relief, some recovery, some reform. The financial success are two key ones there. Are for your bank account. The federal government will reimburse you up to, I think it's $200,000 now, and the SEC is protecting stock market from crashing. Labor wins more rights and more recognition through the Act and Board, the National Labor Relations Act and Board. Agriculture, you start having price supports, which will be with us until the early 2000s. First woman in the cabinet was the Secretary of Labor, Frances Perkins. African Americans are involved in FDR's, some of his programs. Mary Bethune will be a leader of the National Youth Administration. Mexican Americans, Cesar Chavez is only a young man here. He will eventually, when the 1960s, will create the United Farm Workers, which is for the migrant workers of the country that go around. And then Native Americans are back on the scene now after our earlier talk about the West. And so you have an Indian Reorganization Act, and John Collier will be ahead of that.